tiny little foot. Oh, are you sure it's not twins? Another thing that became helpful in my second trimester was... Hey guys, welcome back to my channel, or welcome to my channel if you're new here. My name is Julia, and for today's video, we're gonna be talking all about my second trimester of pregnancy. So at the time of filming this, I actually am not pregnant anymore. My baby has been here for several months. If you would like to stay more up to date on my life and kind of what's going on, I recommend that you follow me on Instagram to keep up to date. But I figured I would kind of keep things sequential here on YouTube as I post videos. Before we get into this one, don't forget to check out my first trimester recap video because there are a couple really helpful things that I kind of used throughout the whole entirety of my pregnancy that I'm gonna talk about in the first trimester video that I'm not gonna talk about in second and third just because I've already mentioned them once. So you know what I'm saying? Like, just go watch that video first, okay? Let's go ahead and dive right in. I am going to count second trimester as weeks 13 to weeks 26. I know that there can kind of be a little bit of wishy-washy and overlap between where each trimester starts and ends, but for the purposes of this video, we're gonna have week 13 to week 26. So let's get started with symptoms. Now, I'm sure you have heard women talk about how second trimester is the most blissful part of your pregnancy. You're not super big, but you're not nauseous anymore, and you're just kind of in this nice honeymoon phase of pregnancy. And that is not the case for all women, but it certainly was the case for me. I loved second trimester. I thought it was absolutely wonderful. But there are definitely some symptoms that I would like you to be aware of in case these also happen to you. So the first one that I really experienced was probably around 15 weeks, and this was pregnancy anxiety. Now, I'm sure a lot of people are aware and well warned, I guess, of the potential for miscarriage in the first trimester. And even, you know, doctors will say, don't share your news of pregnancy yet until we're in the safe zone. And we kind of view second and third trimester as we're good to go. However, a Christian influencer that I follow, when I was probably around 14 or 15 weeks, announced that she had a miscarriage. And the way her family handled it was so beautiful and so honoring to the Lord, even through their grief. And it was just such a testament to their faith and their trust in the Lord. But I will say, I kept hearing stories of later miscarriages. This one was a later miscarriage that I was referring to. And so I started hearing these stories, and they started just filling my mind and becoming very detrimental for my mental health at that point in the pregnancy. I started becoming very, very nervous about how the baby was doing. And something I don't think that gets talked about enough is how far apart your appointments are when you're pregnant. Because I had the initial ultrasound appointment at 8 weeks, and then my next one was not scheduled until I was 15 weeks. So that's a very long stretch of sitting there twiddling your thumbs. You're not really feeling the baby move quite yet. And so you're like, well, I hope it's doing well in there. I have no idea. And so it's a little bit nerve-wracking as you're sitting and waiting for your appointments. So that really was the first big main symptom. I will say once I was able to have more appointments more frequently, that anxiety really subsided and I had much more peace of mind, and I gave it up to the Lord. Now the next symptom, I guess not really a symptom, but I guess thing along with pregnancy, is I started to feel the baby on my bladder at about 16 weeks. That's when I really felt like this pressure on top of my bladder. And it didn't feel the way that I always expected it to feel. I kind of thought when I heard women talk about, oh, the baby's on my bladder, you know, I thought that would feel like this constant need to go to the bathroom, but it didn't feel like that. It just felt like a part of my organ that I had never been aware of being able to feel before, if that makes sense. Because, you know, think about your bladder right now. Unless you need to go to the bathroom, you probably don't feel it. You're not aware of your bladder. You don't feel it. But when there's a baby on top of it, it just feels so bizarre. Like, anywho. So that started at 16 weeks and carried, you know, until the baby came out. And then the next, again, not really a symptom, but just a thing that comes along with pregnancy, is I started definitely feeling the baby kick at 17 weeks. Now, I really think that I was feeling the baby before moving around. A lot of people describe it as feeling like a fish or a butterfly in your belly. I think I was feeling the baby move, but it could easily be misconstrued for like gurgling in your stomach. I have a very naturally gurgly stomach, so I don't know if it was gurgles or the baby moving, but I'm gonna tell you, I definitely felt the baby move at 17 weeks. I felt the baby kicking. It was very sweet. We were actually out to dinner, Ryan and I, with my parents, and it was very sweet because I was getting all excited because it was like this tiny little foot. I mean, I assume foot. It might not have been a foot. It could have been a hand. It could have been, you know, whatever. But that was really sweet and really exciting. And it's so fun to feel those movements grow as you prolong in your pregnancy. Now, the next symptom, this one is a legitimate symptom, is Charlie horses. I don't know if other people have experienced this in their pregnancies, but it was horrible. I had never experienced a Charlie horse before, and I would wake up in the middle of the night with them during second trimester. And the first time it happened, I thought we were gonna have to get my leg amputated. It hurt so bad. It was like my foot was locked in position. It hurt so bad. Maybe I'm a baby, but I had never experienced that before, and it was horrible. Now, stick around until later in the video, and I will tell you how I got rid of those and how I was able to kind of manage those a little bit better, but you gotta keep watching for that. And then the last symptom I really want to talk about is a very consistent and regular feeling like I'm going to pass out. My vision would tunnel completely. I wouldn't be able to see in my peripheral vision, and my ears would kind of echo, and all of the sounds, people talking, would sound distant and almost like I was underwater. It was hard to even hear and process what people were saying. And it became to the point where I would have to sit down. Now, this would happen multiple times a day. I will say that I also worked a pretty movement-based job, and I worked it up until I went into labor. I worked a preschool teaching position, so I was on my feet almost all day. I was in my second trimester during the peak heat of the summer, so I'm sure that did not help either. But that was kind of terrifying at times, to be honest, like this just feeling of, you know, everything's going dark, I can't hear anybody, and I need to sit down. But again, I talked to my doctor about it, and we did a couple things to kind of help get rid of that, and I'll tell you about that in a little bit. Okay, now let's talk about ultrasound appointments, and I'm gonna go ahead and include kind of little video clips and pictures as I talk about these things, so you'll get to enjoy those. So my pregnancy was pretty unique in that we moved cities between my first trimester and my second trimester. So we were really in this phase of trying to figure out who our provider was going to be and who to set up appointments with, all that jazz. So like I mentioned earlier in the video, I had my initial appointment at 8 weeks for my first ultrasound, and then my next ultrasound was scheduled at 15 weeks with a new provider. However, we hit some bumps in the road when I tried to go for that appointment. Basically, to make a long story short, we show up for the appointment. I was so excited because we were finally gonna be getting to see little Bean, and I'd get to hear the heartbeat, I'd get to know that it was doing okay, right? I'd been experiencing this pregnancy anxiety, and there was a problem with my insurance. Even though I was working at the same job but a different location, my insurance canceled, or my current insurance stopped when I paused at this one location and had to be reset up at this new location. Don't ask me why. I was not having it that day, let me tell you. So that was honestly extremely devastating. I was inconsolable that day. I remember I just walked out of the appointment mid-conversation with the lady at the desk, and I just started bawling, like hyperventilating, sobbing in the hallway. In retrospect, I'm so thankful that everything was okay, but at that point, I hadn't been to an appointment since 8 weeks. I had no idea how things were going. I had no idea what was going on with the baby. I was so excited for this appointment. All of the emotions, right? I'm sure pregnancy hormones were not helpful in all of this. So anyways, after all of that happened, I kind of had to wait until my insurance finally got in check to get my next appointment. So I finally got that one, I believe at 16 weeks. I was able to get that next appointment. So we were finally able to see little Bean. We were able to hear the heartbeat. We got to see a little bit of movement. It was so sweet. And it was actually hilarious because we couldn't get the baby at that point to move the way we wanted for the pictures. So all of the pictures are very spiny because the baby was, let me think about this. I think baby was facing my spine. So baby was facing this way, facing me. And so all of the pictures of the ultrasound were spine. So the pictures look hilarious. I think we did get one head on and it just looks like a skull. It honestly looks terrifying and it's hilarious. Then, because again, we were in this new city and trying to figure out which provider that we wanted for labor and delivery, essentially, is what it ultimately came down to, is we wanted to make sure we were choosing a provider that we felt comfortable with when it came time for the big delivery. So the 16-week appointment was with one provider, and then we actually had another appointment at another provider when I was 17 weeks. So these were about a week apart, which was awesome for me because then I got to see baby again. And we ended up loving the next provider. There wasn't anything wrong with the first provider, but we just got a better feeling from our second provider of being able to kind of do things in labor the way that we wanted. And that was such a sweet ultrasound. It was just precious. We were able to see the baby a little bit better. It wasn't such a spiny picture because baby had moved. It was absolutely incredible. Now, this is a random tip that I will give to you if you are pregnant and trying to find a provider that you feel comfortable with for labor and delivery. One of the reasons I chose this provider is because the nurse practitioner who sat down with me, she very explicitly said to me that I get to choose what happens for labor and delivery, and they will not do anything without my consent. She said, you absolutely have a right as a patient to tell us no to something that we are recommending. She basically said, you know, we're professionals and we see this every day and we've studied this and we're going to tell you what we think you should do and what we think is the best course of action, but you absolutely have the right as a patient to say no. That to me was so huge because so many providers don't tell you that you have that right. We obviously have that right, but a lot of times they don't make it sound like you do. They make it sound like they're the big man in charge and it's their way or the highway, right? So that was huge to me. And then the second really big thing is I loved that this provider did not make me feel rushed in our appointment at all. I came with a list of questions and she sat in that room with me for probably 45 minutes to an hour just answering my questions. She didn't look at her watch. She just made me feel like she would have sat there all day answering questions if that's what I needed. And that just gave me so much peace of mind. Now, for some reason or another, I don't remember specifically what happened between these next two appointments, but I know that I basically ended up needing 2 anatomy scans. I think maybe they tried to do an anatomy at 17 weeks and they got what they could, but they couldn't see everything. And so then maybe I did one at 21 weeks. I don't know. It's all a little bit hazy at this point, which is why I wish I had recorded this a little bit sooner, but it is what it is. So anyways, we had the 21-week appointment and they were able to see everything that they needed. Baby looked healthy. Baby looked so cute and squishy. We were able to get the 3D images and that was super fun to see kind of who baby resembled, which it's funny because now that baby is here, I don't think the pictures look like the baby at all. It's very interesting. So they're still developing so much from the time that they're, you know, in the womb to when they come out that it's kind of like, well, it's useless to guess who they're going to look like at that point. Okay, now let's go ahead and start talking about body changes, and I'll include some bump pics as we go along and like little video snippets as well. I would say overall through the course of my pregnancy, I had a pretty healthy relationship with my body and the changes I was going through. However, I will say at 14 weeks when my bump was starting to show, it's that weird stage of no one in public knows that you're pregnant. Like it could look like you just ate a big burrito. And so it was just that really awkward stage in pregnancy where it's not a full bump. So you just kind of feel self-conscious about having this like weird pooch. Anyways, I started feeling a little bit of negative feelings towards my body shifting at that point. And I remember just this one day I was crying to Ryan about it. I just felt very upset, very down, and I told him, I was like, I feel so ugly. I feel ugly. And it was so sweet because I think I must have told him this on my lunch break. I think I called him on my lunch. When I got to my car after work, he had left flowers in my car on the dash. And then when I came home, he was like, I just want you to feel beautiful. I wanted to treat you, you know, and then, so I can't express how helpful my husband was for this journey and how crucial he was in the pregnancy. It's just so beneficial to have a supportive husband through this. So always a shout out to my hubby. One of the changes I started experiencing as my belly was growing was the linea nigra. I had that pretty early on. I got it in my second trimester and it just got darker and darker and higher up the further my pregnancy went. Some women only have it from their belly button down, and I ended up in pregnancy, I got it all the way up basically to in between my breasts. And like I said, it just got darker through the pregnancy. It has since gone away. It's just a hormonal thing that happens sometimes. Now, if you watched my first trimester recap, you probably will realize that I started showing very early for a first-time mom, and all of the doctors were basically telling me it's just because I'm so short and petite. I'm on the thinner side, and so there was nowhere for the baby to go but out. And so my whole pregnancy, I would always get comments about, oh, are you sure it's not twins? Or, you know, you're all belly, things like that, which for me, those didn't offend me. I didn't ever get upset about, like, you know, getting my feelings hurt about my body image or whatever, because it's true. Like, the belly was bellying. It was popping. But having said that, my belly button popped really early. I know for some women, their belly buttons don't come out at all during their pregnancy. Mine came out probably at around 22 weeks. It started coming out, and I have been very proud of my innie belly button in years prior to being pregnant. And so I feel like this was God humbling me a little bit because it looks so funny. It looks so funny to be wearing clothes and you just see this little pink little belly button. As I said, I worked at preschool, and so the kids would just come up and randomly poke my belly button, which is great. It's great. If you're feeling insecure about anything, preschool teaching is not the place for you, because kids will they will call out your insecurities. So another thing that kind of surprised me in pregnancy as my belly was growing is how soft your belly is. When I hadn't ever been pregnant before and I thought about a pregnant belly, I would kind of imagine that it would feel hard, like almost like maybe like a beach ball or something. Like it would feel firm, it would feel stiff. No, you can squish it in. I have videos of me pressing on the baby and pressing into my belly pretty far in, especially in second trimester when you're not as far along and the baby isn't as big. Your belly is still quite soft and you can squish your tummy in quite far. It's very interesting. So in case you didn't know, now you know. And then lastly, I'll go ahead and include this in the baby bump segment, is I started finally being able to get a video of the baby moving at around 24 weeks. So that was so sweet and special. The first time I was able to record it. It's very difficult to capture it on film because sometimes babies, it's like they know there's a camera on them somehow. So then they stop moving. Don't ask me how they know, but they know. So for weeks, I had been trying to get this darn baby kicking and moving in my belly. Finally, at 24 weeks, I got it. I did it. All right, let's go ahead and get into helpful little tools and things like that helped me throughout second trimester, even though there weren't very many symptoms that needed helping. So first, let's have a little cameo back to the Charlie horses and the passing out. So when I addressed this with my husband, who is a medical student now, he's actually a doctor, but at the time he was still a medical student, I addressed this to him and I also addressed this to my OB about the Charlie horses and the passing out. Both of their reactions were, well, are you getting electrolytes or are you just drinking water? Yeah, I was just drinking water. Like I said in my first trimester video, I had only been drinking water. I was drinking a lot of water. I was doing great on my water game. I probably had 2 or 3 Stanleys a day, but I was not having any electrolytes. And so both of them basically said, if you start drinking electrolytes every day along with your water, those will probably go away. And they were right. So make sure if you're pregnant that you are getting your electrolytes in along with your water. I specifically used Liquid IV. This is not sponsored in any way, but Liquid IV, if you'd like to sponsor, hit me up. I love Liquid IV. It is so good. I love the different flavors. I love that it's not an entirely sweet electrolyte drink. There's definitely a bit of saltiness to it, which I love. And I don't mean salty. That just sounds gross, but you know what I mean. Like it has a little bit more of that je ne sais quoi. Whatever electrolyte you can get your hands on, use it. I loved Liquid IV. I will probably use it again in the future. Okay, the next item is my pregnancy pillow. Oh my gosh. Here she is. She's beautiful, first of all. This is a gorgeous linen cover right here. And let me actually open this up so you can see. It comes like this. This is from Wild Bird. and it's this really squishy, I wish you could feel it. I wish you could reach into the camera and feel it. But it's this very squishy pillow, and then there's different covers that you can buy. But I bought the linen one in a beige, of course, because I'm a beige girly. But this one is really nice because it has these little ties on the end, and it actually has this little loop right here. So you can even use this postpartum. Basically, you tie it around you like this, and you can use it as a pregnancy pillow as well. Holding your little baby. Now, one of the main reasons I went with this one is because a lot of the ones that you find are those C-shaped ones, or even like the candy cane shaped ones, where you would rest your head on it and then it, it would go around your body. You know what I'm talking about, right? I did not want that. I wanted just a straight up and down body pillow, basically. I wanted to just kind of snuggle it like this because I love my regular pillow. I use the My Pillow with a satin pillowcase, and I just knew I wanted to keep using that. And if you have one of the C-shaped ones, it's kind of hard to use, your own pillow along with it and use your own pillowcase. Anyways, so that's why I chose this shape, and I loved it. I still love it. I still use this at night, even though I'm not pregnant. It's just so comfortable to wrap yourself around pillows. So even if you're not pregnant and you're just looking for extra level of comfort, look no further than the Wild Bird maternity pillow, I think is what they call it. Another thing that was helpful for the Charlie horses and the passing out is compression socks. I started wearing those a little bit more, and those drastically helped. I know they help with circulation. It was definitely beneficial that I work a job where I have to move around and stand up and walk all day long because I was able to keep my blood moving. But if you work some type of office job while you're pregnant, you definitely should invest in good compression socks to help regulate things, especially as your body's growing and you're pumping more blood and yada yada. Another thing I loved throughout my second trimester and even into my third trimester is these linen pants that I'm actually wearing. These are in, I believe it's called coffee, this color. It's just a really nice brown, and these are a linen cotton blend. They're just on Amazon. I'll link them below. But these have a real drawstring here. These actually expand. I wore this all the way up until I went into labor. These were so wonderful for my growing belly, and they're baggy pants, so they're definitely modest. They grow with you. I ordered my normal size. I ordered a small, and they carried me through my entire pregnancy. I didn't need to size up at all. I got these in cream, this coffee color, and black because they just became such an essential, and I used them for work. So if you're looking for something that'll give you longevity through your pregnancy, but then also still work after for your postpartum body, these are a good way to go. Another thing that became helpful in my second trimester was the exercise ball. I think you see lots of women use this in the third trimester, but I went ahead and got it in my second trimester because it just felt so comfortable to be able to sit and bounce and roll and kind of get my hips loose and moving as my belly was growing. It's just so interesting how women's experiences can be so varied. But again, because I got big so early on, it was very beneficial for me to have this ball early. And if you watched my first trimester recap, I mentioned these and I had them linked in that video, but I used the Glaze body oil from Dime and the body butter for stretch marks. And I used that throughout my entire pregnancy, and I did not get any stretch marks, let me tell you that. That combination is elite. I will be using that for all of my pregnancies in the future. So if you're looking to stay hydrated as your body is changing and trying to avoid, your skin just cracking and feeling dry and itchy, those were immaculate. They were the way to go. My skin felt amazing. All right, you guys, that is gonna be it for this video. If you have any questions, you can leave them in the comments down below and I will try to answer them as soon as I can. Don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the bell notification. That way you're notified when I post my third trimester recap, and I'll give you a little spoiler alert. I actually loved my third trimester. It might have been my favorite. That's some tea, but we'll get into it on the next video. Thank you guys again so much for watching and have a blessed day. Bye.